Welcome to Impact OC, the only program showcasing the people and organizations shaping Orange County. With your host, Don Kamber.
Hello, I'm OC Talk Radio Public Affairs Director Don Kamber with another great guest impacting our community in a positive way. OC Talk Radio streams live from UCI's Beale Applied Innovation Center. Today, I welcome Special Olympics Southern California President and CEO Calvin Lyons. Thank you, Calvin, for being on Impact OC.
Good afternoon, Dawn, and thank you for the invitation. It is my pleasure to be with you and your guests today.
Calvin, Special Olympics empowers people with intellectual disabilities through sports, wellness, and leadership programs. It spreads acceptance and inclusion in communities. How are you able to achieve this during the pandemic?
You know, indeed it does. And it's been a challenge, but it has been very exciting. And everything that we do incorporates a great team. First of all, you have to have great staff and a great board. And what they've enabled us to do is pivot very smoothly to a virtual environment where our athletes are able to meet in groups, in their clubs, exercise, and prepare themselves for when the pandemic is over, they're ready to go back to face-to-face sports. So pretty exciting stuff.
Well, explain the athletes and their intellectual disabilities.
Sure. You know, people with intellectual disabilities, as a matter of fact, most intellectual disabilities are invisible to people in the public. It could be anywhere on the autism spectrum. It could be someone with Down syndrome. But people who typically have problems or difficulty processing information to some degree. So a lot of people could apply into that arena. But what we've done is taken sports to link those groups together to help build wellness and a lifestyle that helps them to live independently. But the big thing is the sports link and how it helps them to remain healthy.
So how are they able to do it during the pandemic in terms of getting involved, active?
Oh, it's a lot of fun. If you go on Zoom, you'll see all the Brady Bunch squares, and there could be an entire basketball team or baseball team in each square. And sometimes they may not have seen each other for a few days. So they're, first of all, greeting each other. And there may be an NFL pro linebacker who's there leading the exercise, or a staff member who's making sure that they stretch, that they actually have nutrition and cooking, recipes, hydration, sort of mindfulness, how do they relax and focus. And all of those things actually happen on a Zoom format. So it involves coaches and engages volunteers and entire families to get involved.
Tell us about the demographics of the athletes.
Wow, that's a great question. The demographics, athletes for our region, Southern California, which includes Orange County, and thank you for your support there, extends from the California-Mexico border all the way up north to Kern County. And then at that point, Northern California actually takes over. But it's a huge 9-county area, and we serve over 38,000 athletes in that space. So we have a big field of dreams, and we make it work.
What are the age ranges of the athletes?
Age ranges can go down as low as 2, some of our early entry programs, until infinity. We have athletes who have been with us for over 30 years, 40 years, because this program extends into adulthood. And when it was started back in the 60s, Rayford Johnson, the gold medal Olympic decathlon champ, was our founder. We just lost him in December. So we're still sort of reeling a bit. He was a great man, but you can see some people who came in the 80s who are still very engaged, whose parents introduced them, but they're still engaged.
And the importance of exercise for people with intellectual disabilities. I realize people who don't have intellectual disabilities needs exercise, yes, but these people need it as well.
That is so true, because and especially with COVID, we found that many of our people with intellectual disabilities are more susceptible to COVID, almost 8 to 9 times as much, from serious injury or illness and including death. So our job is to keep them moving. There are issues with diabetics, mobility, et cetera, weight gain. So we're doing all we can with a computer and our virtual environment to keep them moving. And one of the things, if I can share, we're doing is moving across California. Move Across California is a virtual sort of run, walk, skate, or whatever it takes to get those steps in, from the border of Southern California all the way up to San Francisco And our next pit stop, which are really fun events, where it's a virtual pit stop, is going to be at Yosemite on on the 3rd. And then we'll have another one at Sequoia. And they've gone along the line and they'll finish the race at USC. And so far in total, we've covered 174 million steps. So we've done enough to circle the earth 3.5 times, and we aren't done yet. So that's one of the fun activities that we do virtually that our athletes just love.
So you're saying that they're looking at their computer and exercising in order to achieve these goals?
They can do that. They can actually go out as long as they maintain the physical and social distancing and mark those miles on a bicycle or walking or anything. Get out, get fresh air, but make sure you calculate the miles, because there's also a fundraising element where their teams are able to sign sponsors and bring in resources to support the organization during this time, where sometimes it could be tricky to raise funds.
Share with us the joy that the athletes feel when they accomplish their goals physically.
Well, your radio audience may not be able to see it, but behind me on the wall, you see those medals? Those are medals that our athletes are able to win. And even though they can't get those now, they know that to compete when they come out of go into the post-pandemic world, they need to be ready. So staying in shape now, the incentive to stay in shape now propels them to be ready to say, hey, you've got a basketball game. Your team needs to be in shape, because if you don't have the conditioning, you probably aren't going to do well on the court.
Now, I know you have a lot of virtual activities for the athletes so that they will remain fit for when the time comes that they could be in person. Share with us some of those activities.
Well, the first ones are typically loosening, stretching, making sure that you don't incur an injury because you're overstressing a tight muscle. So we usually start off with maybe a head or neck rolls, arm rotations, and then we go into maybe a more vigorous calisthenics to keep them up, flexible, and build strength. Some of it may involve, balls, basketballs, dribbling skills, and all those types of activities. Football, I should say soccer, shouldn't I? Soccer, and how to kick the ball around. And they could be outside too, because you could do this with a cell phone.
Share with us some stories of some of the individuals involved.
Sure. I heard a story this morning that I'll share, because it's exciting to know as we head into one of our biggest fundraisers of the year, we have athletes who also work and live independently. And one of those works at a grocery store. He works at the Albertsons Vons Pavilions, AVP is what we call it. And he bags groceries, and everyone in the neighborhood knows him. He and his father are flying out. He's at the airport, and people are calling and saying, hey, how you doing? And his dad is like, oh, okay. Well, where do you know them? Oh, yeah, they're grocery store guys. He knows them and they know him. That's at takeoff. And then at landing, hey, how you doing? He knows more people at the other end. And his dad is saying, maybe I should be your agent or something. But this is a gentleman who friendly, engaged in Albertsons Vons Pavilions as the employer and sustainer, benefits, etc. Full-time job, works, engages in the athletic competitions, and supports his community, because they're not just athletes, they're leaders. We have athletes on staff who represent us at the national level when we have a day on Capitol Hill, speaking to the legislators about the importance of inclusion and how athletes with intellectual disabilities need to be considered. So good stuff all around.
And you have family that helps the athletes as well as staff.
Without a doubt, Dawn, if we didn't have the family support, the coaches and the volunteers engaged in this process, it would not work, especially during the COVID environment. We're having to take care of my mom, who is elderly and needs additional support. And now that we can't take her out and we're trying to keep her safe, we need to make sure that we educate our families and volunteers on ways to do that, especially since our athletes, again, are more susceptible to illness. But we also know they're more susceptible to other diseases due to inactivity. So making sure that the parents, volunteers, and anyone maybe in a group home who's managing understands the importance of this and how fun and easy it can be. Very engaging to get people who are not people with intellectual disabilities involved in this. And I can huff and puff and do one of those exercises, and then I'll come running over to you and say, Dawn, help me, please. This is
Well, I have to ask you, what do people with intellectual disabilities teach you?
You know, the power of inclusion, and I've led inclusion and diversity initiatives at major corporations, but I also have a daughter with I have a child with an intellectual disability. I'll correct that. And so I understand it. My wife is a special ed teacher. She understands IEP. She's also a social worker. So our family is very engaged in this. So I'm learning that there is almost nothing that they can't do. You understand resilience, and you also understand the value of teamwork and support of supportive networks and how to support other people. It's awe-inspiring when you see someone cheer for their competition. Your competitor's at the line, you're running, they're running in the next race, and you're cheering for them. And that type of sort of from the soul love and compassion for their fellow men is just amazing. It's something I think that's much needed in today's society.
So when you have different kinds of activities, it's geared to the people with their particular disability so that they can succeed.
It is. And it's also challenging enough to help them reach and grow. And one of the things we provide at those activities are health screening opportunities. We usually look at several areas, one being, are their feet healthy? Are their eyes healthy? Can they see? And we actually give vision tests. We do a quick dental screening. If athletes need to be referred for dental work, we do that. It's just a general health screening, and Kaiser Permanente has been our partner with that, and an excellent partner, almost from Washington all the way down the West Coast. They have been phenomenal. And our chief medical officers are part of that organization. And we had one athlete who actually, he wasn't treated well at a dental office, and someone used push pins in as part of his dental practice. So the pain created such a discomfort at the dentist that he never went. So during one of those screenings, they actually looked into his mouth and said, oh, I think we have a problem. They called someone over and said, hey, we need to refer you. We need to get you into a dentist to take some x-rays. He had gum cancer and had 1 month to live, but they solved it, they fixed it. And to this day, he is one of our staff members, coveted staff members. And just to know that I wouldn't have had the chance to meet him if someone hadn't done that work, it just gives me chill bumps.
How can people volunteer for your organization? Because I would imagine it's very fulfilling.
You know, I've heard people say it's more than that. And as you ask me, what do I learn from it? The volunteers learn the most. I think people come in with preconceived notions, and then they go to an event and they may volunteer day out, but the best way to do it is to connect via our website. That's where you'll find out about how to get engaged, what days, and especially as we return to activities, lots of volunteer opportunities abound, from board membership all the way to a day of event, to helping to set up, prepare food, etc. And it is the most, how can I say, engaging volunteer experience that some of our folks report they've ever had. And many of them started 30, 40 years ago. Please
give us the website.
I will. It is SOSC.org. SOSC.org. That's Special Olympics Southern California.org. And all of the things I'm saying, you can go to the website and get additional information, including on some of our fundraising efforts. So.
And explain some of your fundraising efforts.
Well, I think fundraising is fundraising. I think it's a lot of fun. And one of the things we're doing now is the Dream House raffle. With the Dream House raffle, the person who could win this house, it's a dream house, a brand new house. It's over 5,000 square feet. It has 5 bedrooms and 6 bathrooms. And I always love having more bathrooms and bedrooms. I think that's really cool. And in this house, though, and if you go into the kitchen and you actually physically touch the kitchen cabinets, the doors open automatically, almost like the gold wing doors on a car. And you touch the button and they just retract. And it has dual fireplaces, great cooking area outside, a pool, a spa, accordion glass doors, and it's on 2 1/3 acres of property. It's in Agoura Hills, and it is our grand prize, of course. But even up to that point, there are other prizes you can win: a Tesla with long range, a Porsche, and the chances of winning are 1 in 20 Those are the odds, and there are over 3,000 prizes. So it's better than any other raffle I've seen. But yes, I would encourage people to go to our website or go to SoCalRaffle.com, SoCalRaffle.com. Purchase tickets and help us in that way as well. And go ahead and have a chance to win really great prizes.
Do you have programs for people who help people with disabilities?
I would say yes, through the volunteer effort. I think that's where a lot of people learn sort of how do you approach, how do you eliminate the preconceived notions that you have? How do you help people who have intellectual disabilities sort of rid themselves and others of the stigma that's sometimes connected to it? It's unbelievable the things that people think about people until they get to know them. And well, I've seen that, excuse me?
Give us a little lesson.
Oh, sure. A lot of people would not think that someone with an intellectual disability couldn't serve on a nonprofit board or for-profit board or run their own company. And when I hired in, 3 of our athletes were members of the board, and they were on the selection committee. They understood the questions. They were fire back sort of follow-up questions. And many of them have won over the last few years, hundreds of medals by competing across not only the local area, but the World Games, which were hosted in Los Angeles in 2015, which was the largest, I think, sporting event in history. Special Olympics opportunities are sometimes bigger than the Olympics. I don't know if people understand that, but giving that opportunity to build muscle, build resilience, build self-esteem, teaches people that, maybe I've been setting some limits for others that I shouldn't have. Maybe I've been setting limits for myself that I shouldn't have. And now I'm inspired by our athletes to do things that I never thought I could do. So I hope they keep it up. I'll follow them.
Yeah, so when people encounter people with disabilities, how should they treat them?
I can explain that best by what we call our Unified Champion Schools model. We found that when we introduce the inclusive nature of intellectual disabilities, so people with intellectual disabilities, into a school setting, it reduces the bullying at school from 94 to 96%. And that's across the school. Because you cease to become, my friend Dawn who has an intellectual disability. That's my friend Dawn. So all of a sudden, the sports teams, which is how we introduce it, begins to permeate the school so that people with intellectual disabilities say, it's John. It's not John who has an intellectual disability, it's John. And then taking that model, and as our students graduate from high school, helping them to be incorporated and included into post-high school life. If there is an opportunity for them to attend college or a trade school or to get a job or to do anything, then they go into that society or that culture saying, I know who I am, I know what I can do, and I'm resilient enough to know that I can't believe everything that people tell me or their biases or prejudices. I know who I am because I've been told and trained and taught that I can stand in these environments and I can succeed.
Do you believe there's a decrease in bullying since the awareness is high for people with all kinds of issues?
I believe that there is. I believe that, there's power in knowledge. And I also believe that knowledge helps to eliminate or at least decrease fear. And I think a lot of these things are driven by fear. People are different. So I must be afraid for some reason. And that's not true. Once you get to know people, and I know we all have had those experiences, or at least many of us, where we thought something about a certain group. But once we got to know them, we're like, oh my goodness, get to know them on an individual basis. And that works, I think, with people with intellectual disabilities because they span the entire gamut. Again, a lot of people with intellectual disabilities, you won't know by looking at them. But they're all races, ethnicities, genders, you name it. So don't go in with the preconceived stereotypes, and you're in for the lesson of a lifetime. And enjoy.
Yeah. What can parents tell their children when they approach people with intellectual disabilities so that they won't be rude to someone in that predicament?
Parents can begin by not just telling them, but modeling the proper behavior. I think the youth will catch more of what they see you doing than what you say. At least that's what my mom told me, and she was right. So if they model and say, oh, look, and the kids may say, why is that person doing it? Or what's different about them, mom? And the parent has an opportunity to explain, yeah, that person is different. We're all different in some kind of way, from our fingerprints to everything else. But what can we do to help build an inclusive environment, an inclusive society for everyone so that they can reach their full potential and sort of help us build this community that we need so much.
Is there any idea when you'll be able to do things in person?
Well, I would say, Dawn, we do see a light at the end of the tunnel, so we're pretty excited about it. A lot of it depends on, what happens with vaccine distribution and how soon that could get to the areas where we have our athletes, and that's the entire Southern California area. And some of that is coming into us at different time periods, different speeds, different paces. So we're trying to be very careful with making sure that volunteers and families understand the process. We're in a position now where we can't recommend or tell people that they have to. That would not be feasible. And we want to be careful because we don't want to tell someone to take it and then they get sick from it, or tell someone not to take it and then they get sick. So we have to be sure that as a business, we protect our athletes and ourselves. But our hope is that hopefully by Q3, and we're taking it quarter by quarter, we'll be able to have in-person activities, and we'll follow the guidelines of the state and the counties where we do business to see how they could help us by setting the numbers, and then we'll pace ourselves to what they say.
Thank you, Special Olympics Southern California President and CEO Calvin Lyons, for being on Impact OC. And I thank everyone for tuning in. I'm OC Talk Radio Public Affairs Director Dawn Kamber. Have an impactful day.
You've been listening to Impact OC, the only program showcasing the people and organizations shaping our community. Right here on Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio.